Welcome to Spring LIB.
Alright, so for the last part, your 95% confidence interval for the differences, the confidence interval would be the difference between the two means, which is your point estimate, plus or minus the margin of error, which is the critical t times the standard error. And the standard error is the square root of the first standard deviation squared over its sample size plus the second standard deviation squared over its sample size. And the critical t since we have a small sample size, we'll have to use the formula for the degrees of freedom, which will be the standard deviation for the first sample squared over its sample size plus the second standard deviation squared over its sample size squared over that ratio squared over the degrees of freedom from that sample plus the second. Now let's start substituting things. The degrees of freedom, since you got the standard deviations correct, would be 6.98 squared over there are 10, and then 4.53, and there were 12. Alright, so the degrees of freedom, get that to a calculator. .9, so we'll call it 15. And so our critical t there's a total of, well, the t distribution, two-tailed 15 degrees of freedom at a significance of 0.05 will be 2.1314. Okay, so now we've got our difference of our means, which is our point estimate. That's going to be 20.2 plus or minus the critical t times the standard error, which is going to be the square root of 6.98 squared over 10 plus 4.53 squared over 12. The lower boundary would be found by subtracting 20.2 minus 2.1314 times the square root of 6.98 squared over 10 plus 4.53 squared over 12. And they get 1473 to the upper boundary from adding 2567.